Candace Cooper is joining the show to discuss the CIAA Tournament, and Gerald Huggins is joining as we kick off our top 10 HBCU draft eligible players. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald sports editor. Thank you for making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Run Your Pool. Run all of your March Madness brackets there. Come on, win some cash prize. Go to runyourpool.com/locked on. And we're kicking off the show with Candace Cooper of Locked On ACC. She has a very interesting job that she's going to be doing at the CIAA Tournament. And then we just want to get her perspective on what we should be looking out for when watching these games. And now joining us, we have Candace Cooper, host of Locked On ACC and also co-host at the CIAA Tournament. Thank you for coming on the show with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love Mouth of the South as your name. That's dope.
Thank you. So I want to ask you, we know you Locked On ACC. Make sure you're checking it out Monday through Friday, right? But then also, how did you get hooked up being the co-host of the tournament?
Yeah, it's so funny. My family friend, she reached out. Her husband actually is like over talent and event coordination for the CIAA tournament. And I sent my reel, thanks, Locked On ACC podcast, and I got picked. So it's really exciting just to have the opportunity. It's my first arena host gig. And so I'm super pumped, especially with this because it's us, right? I think it's always good when you have family, you can get that real honest feedback. So I think I can learn a few things, throughout this process and have a lot of growth moments. So I'm super pumped to do it.
Definitely. Just real quick, what is it that you'll be doing out there? Like, explain to the people what hosting the tournament is like.
Yeah, so you're all about getting the fans hyped. So you get to run different activations throughout. So let's say it's the half court contest presented by Coke or Nationwide or whatever have you. I'm the one who's, setting up the scene. So I'm like, all right, Mouth of the South, he's about to take this half court shot for chance to win $25,000. Can he do it? Let's make some noise for him. Like, that's me. So I'm going to be that person.
Oh, okay. Okay. So let's get into the people on the court, right?
Yeah.
With everything going on in the country right now, there's been multiple cancellations. Teams in there have not played the same amount of games. Mm-hmm. Do you think that'll have any impact on them going into the tournament? Just the discrepancy between teams?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be different for some teams who've had energy behind the crowds, right? Other schools have had no fans, no students allowed throughout, this latter half of the season, and some have. And so I think the dynamics is going to be different for people who can play in front of an audience. I think whoever is going to be able to get fueled by having a big crowd who's going to be very vocal and very honest is going to be a factor in how they play. But you've seen already, the starter tournament started on Tuesday, some upsets, people coming in hungry, wanting to get that title. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the dynamics shift in terms of teams who were able to have some sort of energy behind them and those that weren't.
Yeah, you spoke about upsets. What if you had to take one guess, right? So we're just taking the underdog. If you had to take one guess of a team that could be an underdog upset, Cinderella type team in this tournament, men or women, who you think?
Okay. It's a great question. I think for me, I would put a lot of money on, if I was just guessing, having a squad that I wanted to pick. I feel like Claflin is a team that can certainly make some noise, and they have a strong squad about them for the women's side. I think for the men, it's not really upset. I mean, I feel like people maybe have their doubts about them, but Winston-Salem State, it's always, Ram. I have a lot of Ram family, so I feel like they're going to be a real strong candidate when it comes to delivering a CIAA title. They're very hungry, so I really appreciate, kind of what they've done this season. And it hasn't always gone their way, but they certainly have been in the fight mostly.
Yeah, they have. And a lot of that has been because of their powerful backcourt of Cook and Dyson. What do you think makes them really keep that team going?
Yeah, I think it's energy, right? I think it's all about being able to play off each other and pick each other up and having minimal turnovers and always knowing when the other might need you to pick up the slack. And so I think for them, just being that real, feisty backcourt that's always going to come through, and they're not going to let you just get away with anything, and they're going to make you pay for mistakes and pay, with points off turnovers, those kind of things. So I think they're going to be really significant as they move throughout the tournament.
And another, I think, an individual player that obviously has stood out, and that's Brianna Brown. She has a team Lincoln, #1 seed on the women's side. What is it about her game that makes her so special?
Man, I think she's just such a force, right? I think anytime that you can just take over the game, if you're called upon, and we see that a lot just in basketball in general, like we see sometimes you have an off night and maybe your teammates help you out. But for her, I think she's so critical for her to be great at all times that I've loved seeing her game kind of matriculate and just the way she's been able to just listen. Hey, it's my time. Hold on a second. I'm gonna go up in here and really hold it down. So I really am excited to see kind of how she carries out throughout the rest of this tournament.
Yeah, definitely. So if you had to give a prediction, there's a lot of teams in there. If you had to give a prediction, who you got coming out of the women's side? Who do you have coming out of the men's side?
If Brianna can really, it's hard to play a lot of games when you're dependent, that person is dependent on you or your team is dependent on you. I would say Livingston is a strong choice. I also feel like, when you think about Virginia State, definitely can play a factor in that one for the women. Men, I would keep my, wits about me and want to say that I think that Winston-Salem State is going to finish it out, but upsets happen every day. I think that, Shaw certainly can be in the conversation. More importantly, though, I'm ready for fun. Like, I think having games where fans can be involved and having that rich tradition back from CIAA tournament, I just want a good experience. Like, I want junk talking. Like, I want people to just really get into it.
Yeah, and then lastly, you spoke about it earlier that it was in North Carolina for so many years. Now it's made its return to Baltimore. It's a whole spectacle behind it, right? It's everybody there. But now it's back in Baltimore. What do you think that means for the tournament? Because it's a big deal coming back to Baltimore.
Absolutely. And, I think for their fans not having to travel to North Carolina, like I think for me being from Raleigh, North Carolina myself, being spoiled and having it right in my backyard, I understand now having to go travel. It's a whole, situation, right? You can't just pick up and walk down the street and get you a ticket and whatever. So I think for those fans, especially like Bowie State fans, they're able to really kind of have that backyard experience, which is great. I was talking, to some people the other day, like growing up, like my church group, sang at the halftime show. And, we were in CIAA in Charlotte. Some of my great, high school senior year, probably had no business, younger 20 days were in Charlotte, hanging around, seeing who was who, all that kind of stuff. Man, it was a vibe. And so just to have the tournament back, being able to celebrate each other, being able to celebrate our culture, it's always a good time. So I'm really just, humbled to be able to be a part of the experience. And I really hope fans, especially in the Baltimore area and more importantly, North Carolina, they give it a chance, right? You see many of the schools, St. Aug, Shaw, Fayetteville State, they get a chance to travel and maybe see something they haven't seen before, get some good crab, get some good seafood, whatever you eat, I think it's going to be a good time.
100%. Now tell the people where they can find you so they can keep track of you.
Yes, Mouth of the South. I love that that's your name. I can't get over that. Thank you so much for having me. You guys can follow at Locked On ACC on Twitter. You can also follow the channel on YouTube. You can subscribe or download wherever you listen to podcasts. Always a good time. Me and my 5 co-hosts every single day. Always a pleasure to have you. You got to come back. I've got to figure out how to get you back here.
We got to
talk some transfer portal talk. I'm sure during maybe some draft talk. Who knows? We'll figure it out.
We will. We'll figure it out. It's always a great time. We'll do this again. No doubt. Y'all go check it out. Download, subscribe, podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Go ahead and run it up. Check out Candace Cooper, Locked On ACC. Thank you for coming on with us.
No doubt.
All right, you just heard what Candace had to say, just giving us some teams to look out for, some players who are some stars, and even a little upset alert. So now we're about to get into Gerald Huggins, and we're going to get into his psyche, going into how he creates his top 10 HBCU draft eligible player list. But first, I want to tell you about Run Your Pool, because March Madness is just around the corner, right? We're in the last week of February. So now that means March Madness is here. And there's no better place to go to run your brackets than Run Your Pool. You want the usual or you want the best? Now, if I'm you, I'm gonna go with the best. And matter of fact, just to prove it to you, I'm doing my brackets on Run Your Pool, right? So there is no better voucher than somebody who's actually going to be running brackets there. I wouldn't tell you to go do something that I'm not. You go in there, you put down some cash prize, and if you use the promo code Pure Madness, that's PUREMADNESS, you will get $10 off. And they have a lot of great things, not just your standard brackets. They have Survivor, they have Pick X. Both are really fun in their own way. And with this, even if you're a novice, see, I'm a novice, right? But they're going to give me all of these intels and all of these details to help me make my picks. So it's not just me going in blind. You don't get that from ESPN or CBS. Go to runyourpool.com/locked on and use the promo code Pure Madness. All right, as we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. And we're starting up our weekly segment for the next 10 weeks leading into the NFL draft. We will be doing one player off of Gerald Huggins' top 10 draft eligible HBCU players. And we kick it off with 10. But first, I want to hear, what is the psyche when going into making a list like this? Let's hear what he says. All right, now I got with me Gerald Huggins of Draft HBCU, and we're curating a top 10 draft eligible HBCU player list. I'm excited for this, man.
Listen, we said before, minimum 5, max of 10. And after the HBCU Legacy Bowl, I said I'm going to redo my list, and then we're going to redo it again after the combine and after some of these pro days. So I'm just looking forward to watching these pro days. I'm going to try and get to a few of them, watching these pro days and seeing some of these players. Definitely the ones that at the HBCU combine, have a little bit of better, have better numbers. So we know the circumstances that down there in Birmingham. So, or Mobile, I'm saying Mobile.
Yeah, them circumstances were kind of tough. But when I look at it and I think about the HBCU combine, the Legacy Bowl, I would assume that probably put a decent amount of shifting in your list that you had did previously, right?
It was a decent amount. I definitely had to add somebody on there. Actually, it was really about the ranking has really changed, but I only really added maybe 2 people on there, and it's it's been a rough one, but I think I have a solid 10.
All right, so let's get into this psyche. When you're thinking about narrowing it down to who you're going to put where, which one is more difficult? Getting all the players and narrowing it down to 10, or once you have your 10, ordering it from 1 through 10?
I think trying to get all the players, because it's like, you try to take your bias out of it, right? That's the first thing I have to do. Because at the end of the day, I think these players are really good, but you also got to look into what other people are saying, like what the scouts are saying, and end of the day, they might see something I don't see. And then you got to look at the team needs and the way the NFL is going. You more or less want to get like a good offensive lineman, a really good pass rusher. If you could find a gem at quarterback, and you need corners that know how to cover. Those are like the key pieces right now to NFL. So I'm just like, well, priority would be cornerbacks, D-line, edge rusher. You got to throw quarterback out there and offensive line. And for the most part, that's what my list consists of. Good pass rushers, maybe a quarterback or 2, maybe. Not sure yet. I'm just keeping it up there. And then we have, some good offensive linemen as well. So we're going to run through it. But for today, we're going to focus on number 10.
Number 10. So I want to continue diving into this psyche. We're going to keep them. We're going to keep them, anticipating, because it's really good once we get into the player. But I want them to understand how you go about this. And you discussed the quarterbacks, the offensive line. How much does that positional value weigh on you? Like, you might have a player who you think is better, but he's not at as valuable of a position. Does that, affect you when trying to decide what you want to do?
It does affect me. It does, because I have to be a realist. The realist, in me has to say, listen, as great as I think this guy is that need as high? Like, let's say, teams need good inside linebackers, but people are not they're not going to draft an inside linebacker too high. It's rare that you see them drafted way early in the first round. But HBCUs got lucky with them drafting Darius Leonard early in the second round, even though, as you can see, you could argue he'd have been the top 15 pick. But it's really about the need. But biggest thing right now is their performance during the season, over the career. their performance in these bowl games. You know, they're in their different Senior Bowl, NFLPA Bowl, Pigskin Showdown, FCS Bowl, Tropical Bowl, which it's talked about last time we spoke. The guy Jeremiah Kane was in like 5 or 6 of those. So you know, I evaluate that. I put some stock into the HBCU combine. I did. I just wanted to see them in person. I wanted to see them how they look, how they hit. I looked more at their drills and actual 40 and the bench and the shuttle and the 3-cone drill. I more or less looked at them in their individual drills, and I just wanted to see how they look and how they move and how they interact with the scouts and stuff like that. That's what I was more or less looking into. So, but yeah, that's how I break it down to players. I watch a lot of tape, watch a lot of film, specifically on defensive line, hours and hours and hours. You know, whenever I have free time, that's what I'm doing. And you know, I think this list is solid. I ran it by the guys at Draft HBCU, my boy Coach Nooks. You know, we got Malik and Tim, and we talked about it, and they said, "Listen, solid list." I was like, "All right, cool. Let's talk about it."
All right. So before we get into number 10, because we're going to get into the guy now, I'm not going to ask you about 9 through 1, 10, or anybody, but give me some of the 11, 12, you know, some of the people who just narrowly missed the cut.
Okay, narrowly missed the cut. I really like Elvin De La Rosa out of Fayetteville.
I liked him in the Legacy Bowl. Yeah, I thought he made some good plays.
He clearly is strong. He got 20 plus bench reps. He has the size. He has the speed. You know, he has a good pro day. Someone's going to bring him into a camp. I was just tweeting about him earlier. I just like the tenacity that he plays with. And he has pretty good ball skills as well, Coach Nooks would tell you. And, you know, he's a guy that, you know, let's be real. For HBCUs, you know, when it comes to the safety play, it was like mainly one guy that we've been highlighting all year, and that's Brother Bell out of FAMU, and then, you know, Corey Rahman out of Tennessee State. You know, those are the two safeties that, you know, pretty much got a lot of publicity. But, you know, and then cornerback wise, you know, that's a whole nother thing. We got 3 legit corners that can get drafted this year. Just to throw that out there as well. Another guy, this is one of those with my heart, Jeremiah Kane. I talk about him all the time. That's my guy. I'm rooting for Jeremiah Kane. I'm telling you, I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for all the D linemen I talk to. I talked to Michael Badejo. I talked to Chris Myers. You know, I talked to Keyshawn James. Talked to Savion Williams. I'm rooting for all of them. I know they have the ability. I know they do. I know. It's just, you know, it's just heavy. It's heavy D line. Most years it's heavy on the defensive line. But you know, they like to get those edge rushers first, and they go to the interior. But it's a heavy interior class, in my opinion, from FBS, FCS, D2. But I'm rooting for them. I think Josh Flowers, maybe Will Adams, and you know, I think D Anderson's another one that just may miss it, but he, you know, it's hard. That size is something that if he could end up being a big slot, you know, a team can use him. I know multiple teams that you know, they like to use that big slot now. You know, you put a Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, these big guys, Michael Evans, put them in the slot and let them go to work on linebackers and slot corners. So he may have a shot. And, you know, I think the two running backs, you know, the big name running backs like Jermaine Martin and Ezra Gray, they're on that line too. Even though I like what I see out of Jermaine Martin. I really do. Even Wilkins and Sylvie. I like all of them.
You give it to them, man. There's so many players in here. You could name about 10 honorable mentions.
Listen, you know? they're good. Some of them with my heart. Others is with, like, you know, just being realistic. But these guys can get into a camp. Drafted, maybe not. But get them in the camp, give them a shot. I promise you, more or less, they're going to at least make the practice squad or something. These guys are good.
All right, so you were able to just hear his psyche, how he goes into making this list, what plays a factor such as positional value. There's so many things that go into narrowing down so many players into a list of 10. But now we get into that 10th player, number 10 on this list. But first, I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the number one place to go for all of your wagering. Look, March Madness is coming up. You can bet on that because it's not just pro basketball, right? We know the All-Star weekend just happened, so that means we're about to get kicked back into it. But it's not just All right, what is Ja Morant doing? It's, man, what is Duke going to do this year? What is Gonzaga going to do this year? It's things of that nature that make betonline.net the best place to go because they have player prop odds. They have who are going to win these games. And even with that, all of those things that may get you distracted, don't forget they also have boxing. They also have UFC. They also have hockey. They have all of these things. Even if you want to go to NCAA baseball, they have everything pro and collegiate. So betonline.net is the best place to go. Understand, I'm not going to lie to you. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, we have Gerald Huggins giving our 10th player in our top 10 draft eligible HBCU player list. This is a guy that he loves and he raves about, and I want to let you hear why he likes him so much. Yeah, and when you're talking about those defensive linemen, Michael Badajoe, that's my guy. I've known Badajoe for years upon years, right? So let's keep it along those lines. Let's look at the defensive linemen, and the first player that we're going into is Jerry Garner, defensive lineman out of Mississippi Valley State. What is it about this guy that first got your attention?
Man, let me tell you, his get off is really what got my attention. Like his ability it's a quick twitch. You could tell there's some defensive linemen that look at the ball and there's some that look at the knee. There's some defensive line coaches, they teach you to look at the knee because the knee will move. Sometimes offensive linemen like to move before the ball snaps. So they say, look at the knee, look at your key, look at the knee. But you could tell this guy has some quick reaction. And then when I saw it in person at the HBCU Combine, and even he was co-signed by an NFL legend, said that he was the best guy out there. He said that out of his mouth. So it just confirmed everything that me and Draft HBCU already believed about Jerry Garner. He's a violent player in a good way. He's a lovely guy off the field. Smile, he's saying, he's a great guy. Great guy. You know what I'm saying? But on the field, he's nasty. Nasty. He has violent hands when he gauges against the run. You can see he extends. He's a short guy, but he has a nice arm lift. I think he's about 78-inch reach, which is pretty decent for 6'1", about 250. Good. He knocks his key back. It's rare that he's getting knocked back on the back his way into his linebackers like that. He's really good style against the run. He could play the pull correctly if he ever had to squeeze into a 3-tech position, just for certain packages. He knows how to defeat the cut block well. That's a very underrated skill for some people. Lineman. He made a lot of plays, and it wasn't a lot of sacks like for like a couple of those years at Mississippi Valley State, but he was always getting hurries. He was getting quarterback hits. He was always around the ball. So that's good for a defensive lineman to always be around the ball. And you just want somebody that's going to make a big play. And, he for some reason, he always has his best game against Jackson State. I don't know why that is. His whole career, I think he has a sack every game versus Jackson State. Even his 3 sack years, he made sure he got a sack versus Jackson State. I don't know what that's coming from. I'll probably have to talk to him about it. But outside of that, when it comes to pass rushing, which is most important, that's a team. I'm going to stop the run guy first. That's what I train. But end of the day, it's a passing league. And this guy can get you the sacks. At 6'1", 250, quick twitch with the bend and the violent hands. He's a swipe god. As like Jeremiah Kane said, he's a double swipe god. Double swipe is where you take your inside hand, your outside hand, you press against the offensive lineman's punch. So his hands are quick and violent. You can see offensive linemen don't really want to get hit with that too much because he's very that's how I say he's a technician and he's really spot on. He has really good aim when he sees it out of the corner of his eye. You can see the hands, boom, he knocks them away. It's beautiful. And to end it all, he has violent hips, which means he could torque those hips and he could run on his ankle with his ankle bent. That's key to a defensive lineman. He has really good bend, and he's already 6'1", so a tall offensive tackle is really hard for them to get under a guy like that. It's pretty much impossible. So that's what draws me to Jerry Garner.
No, I can tell that this is a guy, especially with the defensive lineman specialty that you have, that you really like. So take me to that 2019 season. In that season, he had 16 tackles for a loss. He had 9 sacks. That's his year. If you look at stats, that's the year that you would want to look at. What was really clicking for him in that season?
I think when I think he really started to settle into the college field, feeling, and like it was probably about the middle of the 2018 season where it really started clicking for him, for what I first saw. And this was years ago. And then you could tell from like that point, midway through 2018 to the beginning of that 2019 season, you could tell that the work was being put in. He was quicker, he was faster, he was more explosive, he was way better against the run that year. And plus, like we all know, the sack production. I think he went from 3 sacks in 2018 to about to 9.5 in 2019. Then he had he had quarterback hurries, he had tackles for loss. It was a great year for him. And I just really think you could tell when a player works on this craft. His pass rushing went from okay to like really good in a span of a year. And I don't want people. I know 2019 was a great year, and then 2020 happened, and I think it was 4 or 5 games. He still had 2 sacks in 4 games. So the production was there in the 2020 spring season. In 2021, the production on the sacks wasn't there. But like once I said before, he has a motor, and Jerry is going to be around the ball. But once again, I'll highlight the 2019 season. On tape, that might have been his best pass rushing tape, just due to the sacks, but how he was getting the sacks. He was beating the offensive lineman quickly, like under 2 seconds. He was beating the offensive lineman very quick hands. And it's just some guys just have a knack for going for the ball and go. He like forced fumbles. He also just had a knack for just so it's like, how do I explain it? So it's the second gear you have when you're playing defensive line. Your first gear is just trying to burst the bubble, which is, how far the offensive lineman can reach. So as you burst the bubble, he has that first gear to burst the bubble. But that second gear, once he makes his move, is what's going to make him some money. Because once he sees quarterback and he gets past his key and gets past the block, it's quick. It's over. It's like a sniper. And I love that about him. And I think that's going to be what he's going to get into a camp. I know he's going to get drafted late, but he's going to get into a camp, and that's what's going to get him onto the 53 or even a practice squad. His ability to get that second gear, hit that second gear once he beats the offensive lineman with his initial move. And I've seen it on tape. I even saw it this past year. He has it, and it started in the 2019 season.
Yeah, so when looking at him, he has a lot of talent, but I also think he has some versatility. And he's played a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of defensive line. Where do you see him being in the future? Maybe 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 end? Where do you think he's best at, I should say?
Let's be, realistic. 6'1", 250. It's a lot that can go with that. But I believe, 3-4 scheme with him where he could just go. He has the agility. He has the athletic ability to drop back into coverage. So he could be in a zone blitzing scheme, old school Steelers, zone blitzing scheme. But there's nothing. I can see him, throw him in there with the Rams and let him just run around with Von Miller and Aaron Donald. You know what I'm saying? Because he has that kind of quickness. He has that kind of edge. He has that kind of bend. So I see him as a 3-4 outside linebacker. Or you have them in your nickel packages as a stand-up end. Or your dime packages, whatever package you use, quarters, whatever people call it, and have them as like a stand-up, just a pass rush specialist, whatever it may be. Or, hey, let's just get him on special teams. Jerry Garner is going to do it. It's humble, from what I know from talking to him, humble man. Like he's had one heck of a story. So end of the day, you get him in a situation where he has to ball out. He's going to do it. And I think it'll be best for him to do that in a 3-4 system.
All right. So next week, same time, same day, we'll be back with player number 9. You have to wait to see who it is at that point, though. Gerald, I appreciate you coming on as usual, man. Can't wait till next week.
No, I appreciate you, man. Let's see. Should I? Okay, let me just give one hint. It's
don't give no hints. Don't give no hints. Don't give no hints.
No hints.
No hints. We'll tease it next week.
Love it, man. I appreciate you, man.
No, of course, man. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Go Union. Go Union.
CIAA time.
Yes, sir.
There you have it. Jerry Garner is our number 10 ranked player in our draft eligible list. I'm loving it. from the motor to his ability to stop the pass and run. Then also just where he projects in the future as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I think that this is great. Stay tuned next week. We're going to be back on Thursday. Once again, back with number 9. Couldn't let him get the tease quite yet. Maybe we'll do that next week. But thank you for making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. Y'all know that tomorrow is Friday, so that means it is Feature Friday. But first, for your second listen of the day, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and my guy Crocky, former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker, he's going to be on there, and they're going to be giving you everything that you need to know leading up into the draft. Our draft lead up starts today. Please don't make this the only place that you're getting your draft news. And in the meantime, in between time, y'all can find me on that blue app, that bird, yes, Twitter, at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.